It's an absolute pleasure to be back in Alice for the EcoFair. On the topic of the EcoFair, thank you for coming along. It's really important that we support the EcoFair because I was saying last night at the Ag conference out at Telegraph Station, we really need to support EcoFair because as a national event for arid lands, it is the premier event. And it's kind of funny because when you're doing something in your community and you just think, oh yeah, it's the EcoFair this week and it's the Old Timers Fair and it's the this and the that, it's very easy to undervalue and underestimate just what this event represents. Because people coming together and sharing information, that information these days gets out on the web and the reputation of the event draws new thinking and new people to it. So if I can just say at the beginning that we need to really dig our heels in and support this event and let it be known where it needs to be known that this event needs to be funded as a nationally significant event for Alice Springs. This is the centre of the country and it's from the centre that all things emanate. That's how I like to look at it. And if we make and continue to build this, it's been going for 7 years, and you know we've got to be frank at this point that there's no guarantee that will be on next year, and that upsets me. Even though I've only been associated with it for 4 years, but that's been 4 years of significance that I take with me around the country. So as I said at the community garden, we need to agitate and we need to let the word be known. And even on the schools day, I think one of the most positive things about the EcoFair now is that it's evolved into a schools day on the Friday, and that's where we build the youth pathways into this thinking, and we take their thinking and we share their thinking with the wealth and the knowledge of the custodians and elders like Aunty Doris, and then of people such as Jodie who are out there connecting with the land and using the knowledge and skills of Aunty Doris and the other locals to repair, replenish and rejuvenate and regenerate places such as the Coolabah Swamp, where this time last year I was fortunate enough to film with Gardening Australia, these two lovely ladies who, the story's still up there, and I think that story will be told for a long time because there was a lot of great information shared. So yeah, may the EcoFair prosper, but it needs all of our support. And we need to get behind it. So I just wanted to start with that because as bona fide ambassador, I want to keep that ambassadorship going forever. We do need, and I think one of the best things is to get the schools involved, get the youth involved, and get that word out to the powers that be to fund it. So I'm very privileged to have these two wonderful ladies with me here today. Last night, as I said, there was a Women in Agriculture conference, and that brought women from all around the country and again to the centre of our nation, and it was wonderful that they decided to have their conference here and bring that thinking and I suppose above all else bring the nurturing, bring the female nurturing to the land and to the future and to the outlook. So we'll start off with Aunty Doris. Can you just give us a little bit of background about your connection here to Alice Springs, your family connection, and then we're going to go in and look at country, how Aunty Doris and her people see the country, how they see the landscape, we'll take it right down to how they see the trees, the role of the trees, the role of water, the role of the therapeutic, medicinal and edible aspects of the landscape around us. We'll go into that, but I'd just like, who's from interstate? Who's from Alice Springs? Okay, so there's a few interstaters who would like to I'd like just Aunty Doris to set up for you who she is, and also for some of you here in Alice who might know. So Aunty Doris, tell us a little bit about your background and where you fit in here.
First of all, tell me if you can't hear me. First of all, I don't usually welcome to country, but because it's a special day and you are all special by being here, and Costa especially, warm welcome to you all. And I love talking about this country because being a part of it, seeing it change over many, many years, some of it's very sad because we lose out on most of our sacred trees, our sacred hills, and it just makes me sad that the only way we can get this out is to have a conversation. And it's very hard when you have to talk about yourself, meaning the land, because we're one and the same, and that's how I was brought up. You can't separate one from the other. We take on the responsibility as custodians for this Aranda landscape we all live in. And when our trees are damaged, we feel that pain. We really do. It's like we've lost our arm, we've lost our leg. Is that what you're after? Something like that? Yeah, so it's very hard.
Oh, look, I'd like to keep my legs and my arms at this point.
It's very hard.
I'm feeling what you're saying, yeah.
And I do get emotional talking about things like that because it's very real. We feel it within, from our inner parts of it, from where we're connected to the ground. We feel that pain. A tree gets cut down, burnt, poisoned, and we've had a few of those happen here in this town. When that happens, we feel that pain. And there's no way we can avoid the next one being poisoned or damaged or by fire or whatever. And we just hope that by talking to people and having Costa on board and people like Jodie, who's always stood by family, we've lost a few of our members now by all the damage that's happened here. It's not just a tree, it's not just a hill. We get our life from, our emotions are all tied up in the land. There's not a cost to it, no monetary. We don't get money out of loss of our important places. It's just that pain we carry with us. I don't know whether...
Yeah. No, that's all. So just to draw it back a bit, you grew up, so did you grow up here in town or did you grow up outside of Alice?
I was born out on my mother's country at what you know now as the youth camp at Hamilton Downs. My parents were but that's my mother's family's country, but this is my father's country here that's been handed down from generation to generation. Seen a lot of changes, a lot of damage been done to our sites. I get emotional talking about damage because it's very real. And Jodie, you want to say something, dear?
Yeah, maybe set the scene a little bit further back. So I'm always really honoured to be asked to sit next to Doris, that's for sure. It's an absolute honour. I've been here for nearly 20 years, and I guess some of the most important learnings for me over the years has been to understand this whole connection to country. MK Turner, one of the old elders from our community, developed a poster. She used to tell this story to us in the dirt. So the red circle in the centre is up Murahula. That's country. Everything comes from country and goes back into country. And country's not just rocks and soil. Country is everything. Country is alive. Country's everything from under the ground right up through the ground, the seasons, the stars, the sun, the moon. Everything comes from country. People perform ceremonies to look after country. The plants and the animals come from the country, go back to the country. The language comes from the country, and speaking the language looks after the country. The language understands that country. But the whole thing that brings this together is that black circle at the top there, Punarinj, the Aranda kinship system. When someone is born, it tells them how to relate to every single person in their family and how to relate to their country. So country is kin, country is family. In Doris's case, country is her father's father's country. This Punarinj tells you how you look after your country. So in Aranda, there's 8 skin names, and the Ngwares and the Pultharas and the Abajanas and the Analas, they work together. So that's 4 of the skin names. The Ngware Pultharas are the bosses for Mbantua. The buck stops with them. That's Doris's position. She was born into that. She didn't have a choice to say, oh yeah, I'll put my hand up for that job. It's 24/7 and it's a big responsibility. Her Upajana and Nalas are the offsiders. They're the assistants. They help her hold on to the knowledge, advise her, support her, but the buck stops with the Abmurkatwees.
So, going off that explanation, are there any questions around that structure that anyone wants to ask at this point before we move in any direction? Everything that Jodie just said about. So who were the mentors? Who were the people that you had influenced you when you were young and growing up?
Mainly my father, because my mother, even though she was an Aranda woman, that from a different area, just north of town. So even though being my mother, she didn't really have that right to speak for my father's country. Only his children had that right. And it was the male that had the role over the female. But unfortunately, my father had 7 daughters and 3 sons. So you had to go, to whoever. You didn't know you were being trained into taking over the role. The questions were there, and you were just a kid running around, and they would test you later on. They'd take you to a place, a tree, a hill, and we'll be just sitting down playing as kids do. And later on, about a month later, they'll start the questioning. Who can tell me what this is, and things like that. And you were being taught, but you didn't know at that time till later on, as you grew older, and you could see clearly what was there, what that tree meant, what that hill meant, like this very important site representing one of our main caterpillars that runs along here.
Yeah, tell us a little bit, particularly for those people from out of town, tell us a little bit about the story behind the caterpillars and the range.
Well, this area east of the Todd River is the caterpillars, where people have built their homes. We were prevented from going across the Todd from that side to this side because it was off limits for us as kids. Women and children were forbidden to come this side of the Todd because it was a very important ceremonial ground. And now you see houses all over there. I still can't go on that side.
You don't go there?
I don't go anywhere east of where I am, off Barrett Drive, east. That way it's too important. That's how I was taught. I remember we lived on the other side of the Todd where Gap View Motel is now. And at night when family would come in for ceremonies and that from the west on my mother's side and elsewhere, we'd all sleep outside, all kids and dogs and uncles and grandmothers and all of us. And at night you could hear the singing and the chanting all happening around this area. That's something I will never forget. It was amazing just to lie at night in the summertime. We had no air conditioning then. And all of a sudden the ceremony will start up. We couldn't go and have a look. We were forbidden to. But having the sound carry across is the most beautiful thing I've ever heard growing up as a kid, and I will never forget that. It won't happen again because most of our sites have now been taken over. Pathways going up them and bike paths going past them, damage being done, but we still soldier on because what else can we do? That is our job that we have for life.
So what's the story behind the caterpillars for those? Are most of you aware of most of the locals, but yeah.
I get emotional when I talk about the ancestor beings.
Yeah.
Because it's, you're part of it. Yeah. And it's hard talking about yourself when you're connecting with the ancestor beings. But years and years ago, we had a very caring anthropologist that was in ARPA at the time, the Aboriginal Areas Protection Authority, and he could see the pain. We were a bigger family then, but most of them have passed on now. And he could see the pain that we were going through every time we had to go and talk to developers, government people, whoever, people who were buying homes and that. We had to talk because just to give them some understanding of what it meant and how we felt to that tree being there, or them wanting to build their houses up on hills. We were restricted in going up there. So, I should have bought that poem, shouldn't I? Forgot, didn't you? No. Anyway, that was our job. For about 30 odd years we were doing all that with the Aboriginal Areas Protection Authority. And in the early days we really had to do everything just walking and talking. And it's hard because I could see my family there. Very hard. And most of it was just one big compromise. Because we'd say, but you can't do that. We can give you so much space away from that tree. But you can't because it's going to damage the roots. I can't talk too much.
Yeah, that's all right.
So when you look at the landscape around you here, every nook and cranny on the range there has a name, and you know the stories go through the nooks and crannies. Every rock hole has a name and a story and a lore. And old people of Murukatwi and their Konangolo, time after time, you know, they ask the same questions over and over again, and it's, you know, people feel like it's taking kind of energy and taking spirit from them. So many of the sites connected to the Yiprinya stories on this side, and out the other way there to the west is the Aknulia story, and that's the wild dog story. So there's two massive big stories here. And every little piece of, you know, quartz on the landscape, for instance, is connected to that dog story. And everything around you, this is the sacred centre. This is a really sacred place. And when it's your job to look after all of those sites and you have the pressure of a town on that area where all those sites are, it's just a very, very difficult job.
Sorry about that. It's just happens, you know, no matter where I am. If I'm with one or two people, I feel the same. So it happens all the time. It's just part of the job. And not having my family around me, because we live short lives, because we are responsible in looking after the sites. But like Jodie said, having a town built on our traditional ground has put on more and more pressure for us to try and... It's not a competition. We're not competing with people who want things. We're just trying to get that understanding through that it does mean something to us because we are one and the same. I know it's hard for non-Aboriginal people to put that connection on how our relationship with each other, but it is our life that we have to talk about. But with the caterpillar story, I feel a little bit comfortable now. I can talk. With the coming of the caterpillar from the west, from Mount Seal, we know it as a Latata, coming from the west, travelling, and if you've been out there, locals would have been, and tourists probably out the west there, out near Glen Helen and all those places. Knowing the story, you can see the shape of the caterpillar moving east towards the centre here, and then it gets on the eastern, northern side of Mount Gillen. That's the caterpillar story. Coming through, and it's shown by the ironwood trees in Rose Court there, the little ridge where the rock was taken to replace the one that had to go back to the Devil's Marbles, that was brought down without permission from both tribes. agreeing to having that rock removed from the Devil's Marbles to be brought down here. I was only a kid when that happened in the 50s. To be placed on Flynn's grave there, that's another big story. And pressure was put on family here to find a replacement rock to place on Flynn's grave before that other rock could go back from where it came from on Tennant Creek Way. It was heartbreaking to choose a rock that we had no part in playing about bringing it down from Devil's Marbles in the first place so that it could sit beneath Mount Gillen, one of our most sacred places. In memory of John Flynn, very hard when my brother had to go out with the other men and choose a rock exactly the same as the one that came from Devil's Marble and placed on the plaque. There's a plaque there on Flynn's grave. Have you been there?
No, I haven't been there.
So yeah, that's the pressure that's put on us. We had nothing to do with it coming down in the first place. I was only a kid then. But people just go ahead and think, oh, that looks good. Maybe we could have this here in recognition of the work that John Flynn had done. But they didn't feel the pain that we went through to be forced into putting a replacement rock there. I can't look at that rock today going past there. It's too heartbreaking, knowing how the family were pressured into doing that. I suggested maybe a paper mache, just a plaque would do, but why a sacred rock to replace a sacred rock from elsewhere? No one else has that pressure put on them like we as custodians do here. Very, very hard. And we lost lives over that because that goes with the job. Because then we are found not being responsible for looking after sites. The pressure. None of you would have heard that story, would you? This is the first time I'm sharing that one with you. So yeah, that's why there's hardly any men left now that can speak for this country. Because of other people's needs seen to before ours. And that's what I say, we feel uncomfortable talking about what's happened here in this town because we have no choice. They say compromise. What do we get out of that? We don't want money. We just want our sites protected as we look after them. Money can't give us that responsibility. Money doesn't come into it. All we want is our sites to be respected. That's all I ask of people, to understand where we're coming from. It's not something we go to sleep and dream about and then get up and say, yeah, this just happened. It didn't. It's been going on for thousands of years. And we are just going on and on and on. I hope in another 2 or 3 generations, family are not sitting here fighting for our sites to be protected. Jodie, you better do your job.
Yeah.
Costa?
Jodie, in your roles and in the projects that you're working on, how are you seeing this, I suppose, education coming out through something like the Coolabah Swamp and your other activities?
I think Unkara, the Coolabah Swamp's a really good example of how we can work together really beautifully and share our collective wisdom and our collective humanity. It's a place where in the Ulture in the beginning it was a celebration place where people did come together, so it's quite appropriate that non-Aboriginal people and custodians can come together there and work together, and restoring that ecosystem, which is pretty much the kidneys of Alice Springs, but it's had the water diverted from it with a couple of major drains, so it's unable to do its job as the kidneys of Alice Springs. And just working together with a small group of land carers, but trying to get that message out to the wider community, and certainly trying to bring in children and school groups to begin working in that space, doing a little bit of citizen science, but also understanding the importance of that place. So changing the mindset from a lot of people is, oh, that's just the old swamp where you go and dump stuff, and to no, this is a really sacred, special place, and get in there where we've pulled out the buffel grass and have a look at the 60 species that are trying to make their way back up through. It's a very ecologically important place and an incredibly culturally important place.
For those of you not from Alice, if you go out across the bridge on the is it Satadine, towards Satadine, and on your left there you'll see what would appear to the untrained eye just a big area of open green space, but this is the Coolabah Swamp, which has all of the significant story behind it that Jodie was talking about. How long have you been working on it with the land care, well, in conjunction with Aunty and the land care group?
With that particular project, I very much just sit on the edge. It's the people who live in the swamp that do all the work there. So I'm just trying to spread the word about it, and get definitely pulling in school children to do things there. So setting up excursion packages where the children can come in and do some real learning there.
Maybe I should talk more on the importance of that site culturally. It's when I started off, and I got off the track, when I started talking about the caterpillars travelling in from Mount Zeal, they travelled from the west, same species as our caterpillars here, our Yiperinia, and you can follow the travels of the Yiperinia from the west coming in here. They're represented by trees, by hills, and if you're flying over it and you know the country, I've never gone north by plane to Darwin, but I'm talking from my knowledge. It was just laid out. So they got to the northern part of the Larapinta Trail. There, all along there, you can follow them in the creek, travelling as the trees. They're represented by the trees. And then they get closer to town and they come, when I was talking about rose court and that, they're represented by ironwood trees there, corkwood trees, and then they cross over. This is before roads, and the race course used to be there, and housing and all that. You can still follow the trees, knowing the story, and then they come into Charles Creek as the trees. Going along Swartz Crescent that runs between St. Philip's College and Anzac Hill there, that little creek that goes along there, they are the caterpillars, the travelling ones. They cross over, no road there, no Swartz Crescents. This is way, way back before my time or anyone's time. So then our family, we call them families because we are all one family. They're already waiting as the trees in the Coolabah swamps. You notice, locals will notice the shape of the Coolabah trees, how they're in that dancing mode. It's just the big celebrations. They had their ochre pit on Undulia Road. I don't know the name, but it used to be Verdi Club. Yeah, that's it. And that was where family used the ochre from there to paint themselves up, waiting for the visitors, the same species of caterpillars. They came to the Coolabah swamp and family were waiting there for them. And that's when the big dancing celebrations went on. Yes, so this is where those trees take on the shape. If you look at those trees, you will see they're like they're swaying, and they danced and danced and danced there. But people could see the development going on Satadine there, and they could see a need, even though Satadine Road was already developed and they already had Undulia Road. People that lived over that side and wanted to go into town for work they said, oh, we need 5 minutes off our travelling time from home to work. So what did they do? They created a connector road off Stott Terrace, through our sacred site, onto Unduya Road. And family had to choose which trees had to go to bring that connector road into being. Who could stand and point to the trees? Family had to close their eyes because these are family we're talking about. They're not just trees. We're one and the same. So they had to point which tree had to come out to make way for 5 minutes less of their travelling time. Is it any wonder that I feel the way I do? But I live in hope that people like yourselves, like having Costa on board, could see how very real that damage is, what it's done to us. So people that have lived here for most of their lives would not understand what we went through. I rest my case.
And that's a perfect... that's a perfect word to wrap things up there, Aunty Doris. There is, we do have to have hope, and we do have to work together, and the work that Jodie and others in the community are doing. So it's been very special to be able to sit here and share some time with you. Thank you for telling us some of your story. It's only 40 minutes. It's barely a canapé in the grand buffet of conversation that could. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, put it into 40 minutes, and no, it's been wonderful. When you see this wonderful treasure around town, you know who she is. Both of you. When you catch up with them, speak to them, share the stories, and it is, as Aunty Doris said, it is conversations that bring this to the surface and put the light of day on it, and we can move forward and work together, as she said.
If I could just say one thing to finish up, Costa. I am the boss.
Yeah, well, no, that's right.
Now, I'd just like to say I didn't want to really just get stuck on the one thing, because there are good things that are happening here and good people that are there to support me, but it just comes over me that I have to speak, and I want to thank you all for just listening and taking the time to maybe just take in a little bit, and it's a start for something big. What do you reckon?
Yeah.